Tay walked through the wide corridors of Haven's Gate Station, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The lights above him were bright and clean. Around him, dozens of alien species moved about their daily business. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had features he still couldn't name even after 6 months on the station. Another quiet morning, Hai said beside him. She carried a data pad and checked their patrol route. We've got the agricultural district, then the market sector, then back to Central. Tay nodded. The patrol work was simple. Most days nothing happened. The humans had been assigned to the quiet zones of the station. The important areas, the ones where real security mattered, those went to other species, stronger species, species that had been in space for thousands of years. A group of tall bird-like aliens moved past them. They clicked and whistled to each other. One of them glanced at Tay and Hai, then looked away quickly. Tay was used to it. Humans were new to the galaxy. Other species didn't trust them yet. Or maybe they just didn't think humans were impressive. They continued their patrol through the agricultural section. Giant tanks of water held strange fish-like creatures. Under grow lights, plants from a dozen worlds stretched toward the artificial sun. A small furry alien tended to some purple vegetables. When it saw the humans, it waved a tiny paw. "Good morning, Pip," Hai called out. The alien squeaked something happy in return. "At least someone likes us," Tay said with a small smile. The market sector was busier. Vendors called out prices. Strange smells filled the air, some good, some terrible. Tay saw foods he recognized and many more he didn't. A merchant with 6 arms juggled 3 different conversations at once. Another alien, this one made of what looked like living crystal, examined a display of tools. Then the crowd shifted. Everyone moved to the sides of the corridor. The noise dropped. Even the vendors stopped calling out. Tay knew what that meant. Commander Vexthor walked down the center of the corridor. He was massive, nearly 8 feet tall. His body was covered in black scales that looked harder than steel. His eyes were yellow and sharp. When he moved, muscles rippled under his armor. Behind him walked another Krelvan, his second-in-command Cathar. Both of them carried weapons that could cut through walls. The Krelvan were the apex predators of the galaxy. They came from a death world where everything was trying to kill everything else. They had climbed to the top of their food chain through strength, speed, and aggression. Other species feared them. Most species had lost wars to them. Vexthor's eyes swept across the market. They landed on Tay and Hai for a moment. Tay kept his posture relaxed but respectful. He didn't look away, but he didn't stare either. After a second, Vexthor moved on. "I hate when he does that," Hai whispered once the Krelvan were gone. "I feel like prey." "You kind of are," Tay said. To him, most species are. The market slowly returned to normal. Vendors started calling again. The crowds filled back in, but everyone remained more careful now, more alert. Tay and Hai finished their market patrol and headed back toward the central hub. They passed by the residential districts. These sections were divided by species. Each race had their own area with their own environmental controls. Some needed heat, others needed cold. Some breathed oxygen like humans. Others needed methane or ammonia. The Krelvan section was different from the rest. Heavy blast doors marked the entrance. Security cameras covered every angle. Signs in multiple languages warned people to stay out unless invited. "They really don't want visitors," Hai observed. "Can you blame them?" Tay asked. "They have children in there." Krelvan cubs were rare. The species didn't reproduce often. When they did, they were intensely protective. Cubs were kept in the family quarters at all times. They were never allowed to roam free. Other species whispered that the cubs were even more dangerous than the adults, wild, uncontrolled, with claws and teeth that could tear through flesh before they even learned to. Tokte had never seen a Krelvan cub. He wasn't sure anyone outside their species had. They reached the central security station and logged their report. Nothing unusual. No incidents. Just another normal day on Haven's Gate. Dal, one of the human engineers, sat at a console nearby. He was monitoring station systems. "Hey, you two. How's the patrol life?" "Thrilling as always," Hai said. "We saw Commander Vexthor in the market. That was exciting?" "Rather you than me," Dal said. "Those Krelvan give me nightmares." Bo, the human medical officer, walked in carrying a medical kit. "You shouldn't judge them. They're just different from us." "Different?" Dal laughed. "Bo, they're killing machines. Their whole culture is built on being the strongest, the fastest, the most deadly. They're still people," Bo insisted. "They have families. They love their children. They laugh and cry and feel pain just like we do." Tay listened to them debate. He understood both sides. The Krelvan were dangerous. That was a fact. But Bo was right too. They weren't monsters. They were just very good at what they did, and what they did was survive. An alert suddenly flashed on Dal's console. He frowned and tapped the screen. "That's weird," he said. "What is it?" Tay asked. "Security breach. Krelvan residential section." Dal pulled up camera feeds. Something triggered the internal alarms. The console started flashing red. More alerts appeared. Then the station-wide speakers crackled to life. "Security alert. Code yellow in Krelvan quarters. All personnel maintain current positions." Hai grabbed Tay's arm. "What's code yellow?" Before anyone could answer, they heard it. A roar that echoed through the station's walls. It was full of rage and fear and something else. Desperation. Commander Vexthor's voice came over the emergency channel. His words were controlled, but Tay could hear the emotion underneath. "This is Commander Vexthor. My cubs are missing. I repeat, the cubs are missing. All security teams begin immediate search protocols." The central hub fell silent. Everyone stared at each other. "Oh no," Bo whispered. Dal's console lit up with new alerts. Sections across the station were going into lockdown. Security teams were being mobilized. The search grids appeared on his screen, dividing Haven's Gate into hundreds of sectors. Somewhere on this station, 2 Krelvan cubs were loose. 2 young predators, scared and alone, with claws and teeth and instincts that told them everything was a threat. Tay looked at Hai. She looked back at him. They both knew what this meant. The station had just become very, very dangerous, and their quiet patrol days were over. The station transformed in minutes. Blast doors closed across entire sections. Security teams moved into position. Species that normally crowded the corridors vanished into their quarters. Haven's Gate had become a place of fear. Tay stood in the security briefing room with dozens of other officers. Most of them were not human. He saw the bird-like Trill, the insect Vex, and several other species he recognized. All of them looked nervous. Some were openly scared. Commander Vexthor stood at the front of the room. His mate Nalkira stood beside him. Her scales were deep red instead of black, and her eyes burned with worry. Both parents looked like they were barely holding back violence. "My cubs escaped through a maintenance shaft," Vexthor said. His voice was tight. "Zix and Kira are 6 cycles old. They are scared. They are dangerous. You will find them and return them to me unharmed." A Trill officer raised one wing. "Commander, with respect, what are our engagement protocols?" "If the cubs attack?" Nalkira's growl cut through the room. "They are children. Terrified children. If anyone hurts them, I will tear them apart." The Trill officer stepped back. Cathar, the second in command, pulled up a station map. "We have divided the search into 800 sectors. The cubs could be anywhere. They are small enough to fit through most service tunnels, fast enough to move between sections quickly. Teams of 3, Vexthor ordered. Check every room, every corridor, every shaft. I want my cubs found within the hour." The security officers began to file out. Tay noticed that many of them were shaking. The idea of encountering Krelvan cubs, even young ones, frightened them. Hai touched Tai's shoulder. "They're assigning sectors. We got the lower engineering levels." "The maintenance tunnels?" Tay asked. "Someone has to check them." Bo joined them in the corridor. The medical officer carried extra supplies. "I'm coming with you. If we find the cubs, they might be injured. Or they might injure us," Hai said. "That too," Bo admitted. Dal hurried over with a portable scanner. "Take this. It can track heat signatures. Might help you spot them before they spot you." The 3 humans made their way to the lower levels. The usual crowds were gone. They passed sealed doors and empty corridors. Occasionally they saw other search teams moving carefully through their assigned areas. "This is surreal," Hai said. "The entire station is locked down for 2 kids. 2 Krelvan kids," Bo corrected. "There's a difference. They reached the entrance to the engineering levels. These sections were older, built when the station was first constructed. The walls were darker here. The lights flickered sometimes. Most species avoided these areas unless they had to work here." Tay activated his communicator. "Search Team 7 entering Sector 7A. "Acknowledged," came the response from Central Command. Proceed with caution. The maintenance tunnels were narrow and dim. Pipes ran along the walls and ceiling. The air was warmer here, heated by the station systems. Their footsteps echoed on metal grating. Dal's scanner beeped softly in Tay's hands. He watched the screen looking for any sign of heat signatures. Nothing yet. They moved deeper into the tunnels. At one junction, they found scratch marks on the wall. Fresh ones. The metal was scored by something sharp. Claws. Bo whispered, running his fingers near the marks without touching them. How recent? Hai asked. Minutes, maybe. They came through here. Tay's communicator crackled. All teams report status. Around the station, security officers called in. Most had found nothing. A few reported possible sightings. One team in the cargo bay thought they heard movement but couldn't confirm. Search Team 7, no contact yet. Tay reported. We found claw marks in Sector 7A following the trail. They continued forward. The tunnel split into 3 directions. Tay checked the scanner. There. A faint heat signature down the left passage. He held up his hand. The other stopped. Tay pointed down the left tunnel and mouthed the word something. They moved carefully now. Each step was slow and deliberate. The tunnel curved and narrowed. Tay had to duck under a low pipe. Ahead, he could see where the passage opened into a larger maintenance room. A sound reached them. Small. High-pitched. It reminded Tay of a cat's hiss, but deeper, more threatening. Bo grabbed Tay's arm, his eyes wide. That's them. What do we do? Hai whispered. Tay thought fast. Every instinct said to call it in and wait for the Krellvan adults. Let the parents handle this. But the cubs were scared. If too many people showed up, they might panic. They might run deeper into the station, into areas even more dangerous. We try to keep them calm, Tay said. Bo, you said they're just scared kids, right? Yes, but then we treat them like scared kids. Hai looked at him like he was crazy. Tay, they're not human children. They're predators. Every species is different, Tay said. But fear is fear. Being lost is being lost. Maybe that's universal. Before anyone could argue, Tay stepped forward. He moved slowly toward the maintenance room. His hands were visible, empty of weapons. He kept his body language relaxed. Tay, wait! Hai hissed, but she followed him. Bo came too, though his hands shook. The maintenance room was full of equipment and storage containers. In the dim light, Tay saw movement. 2 shapes, smaller than adults but still substantial. Each one was about the size of a large dog. They had black scales like their father. Their eyes glowed yellow in the darkness. The cubs were huddled together behind a generator. They saw the humans and immediately hissed. Their small claws extended. Their muscles tensed, ready to spring. Tay's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He lowered himself slowly, making his body smaller. Less threatening. It's okay, he said softly. Nobody's going to hurt you. The cubs hissed again. The female, Kira, snapped her jaws. The sound was sharp and vicious. They don't understand you, Hai whispered. They understand tone, Tay said. Animals do. Maybe they do too. Tay's communicator suddenly crackled with static. Then Commander Vexthor's voice came through, loud and demanding. All teams, status report.
Has anyone found my cubs?
The cubs' eyes went wide. They recognized their father's voice. But instead of being comforted, they seemed more frightened. They pressed closer together. Tay reached for his communicator. Search Team 7, we have... Both cubs suddenly bolted from their hiding spot. They moved incredibly fast, faster than Tay expected. They didn't run away from the humans, they ran toward them. Tay barely had time to react. The cubs leaped through the air. Hai cried out. Bo stumbled backward. On the other end of the communicator, Vexthor's voice rose in alarm. Team 7, report. What's happening? The line filled with the sounds of scuffling. Something clattered to the floor. There was a thump, a gasp, and then the communicator went dead. In the security center, every officer froze. Dal stared at his console in horror. The life signs for Search Team 7 were still active, but there was no response to hails. Commander Vexthor's roar shook the walls. All units converge on Sector 7C immediately. Nalkira was already running. Cathar and a dozen other officers sprinted behind her. They moved through the station like a storm, pushing past anything in their way. In the maintenance room, the communicator lay on the floor, its screen cracked and dark. The 3 humans were somewhere in the shadows with the cubs, and no one knew if they were alive or dead. Tay felt the weight hit his shoulders. Sharp claws dug into his uniform, but not deep enough to break skin. Something warm and scaled pressed against the back of his neck. A rumbling sound filled his ears, like a purr, but lower, more powerful. He froze. Every muscle in his body locked. His training said to fight, to throw off the attacker. But something else, something deeper, told him to stay still. The cub on his shoulders, Zix, sniffed at Tay's hair. The young Krelvin made small clicking sounds. His tail wrapped loosely around Tay's chest, not squeezing, just holding. Across the room, Hai sat on the floor with Kira draped across her lap. The female cub was heavier than she looked. Her scales were warm, almost hot to the touch. She had her head tucked under Hai's arm and was making the same rumbling purr sound as her brother. Bo stood against the wall, his medical kit forgotten on the floor. His mouth hung open in shock. "Don't move," Tay whispered. "I think they're calming down." "Calming down?" Hai's voice was tight. "Tay, there is a baby murder lizard on my lap. I am the opposite of calm." Zix's head shifted on Tay's shoulder. The cub looked at Hai and made a small chirping sound. It almost seemed curious. "They're not attacking," Bo said slowly, his scientific mind starting to work again. "They jumped on you, but they're not attacking." Tay carefully reached up and touched the small claw resting near his collarbone. Zix tensed for a moment, then relaxed. The purring grew louder. "I think they were scared," Tay said. "They heard their father's voice on the communicator and panicked. They didn't attack us. They came to us. For protection?" I asked. "Maybe. Or comfort. Or just because we were the closest thing around." Kira shifted in Hai's lap and looked up at her face. The cub's yellow eyes were huge and bright. She blinked slowly twice. Then she rubbed her scaled head against Hai's arm. "Oh," Hai breathed out. "Oh, that's actually kind of sweet." "Don't let your guard down," Bo warned, but even he was smiling now. "They're still dangerous." "Everything is dangerous," Tay said. "But I don't think they want to hurt us." Footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy, fast footsteps. Lots of them. The rescue team was coming. Zix's ears perked up. He tensed on Tay's shoulders. Kira growled, a low sound in her throat. "It's okay," Tay said softly. "That's help coming. That's people looking for you." The cubs didn't relax. Instead, they pressed closer to the humans. Zix's claws tightened just a little on Tay's shoulders. Kira tried to burrow deeper into Hai's arms. "They don't want to be found," Bo realized. "They ran away for a reason. Or they're scared of all the chaos," Hai said. "Imagine being a kid and suddenly the whole station is looking for you. All these strangers searching." Alarms going off. The footsteps got closer. Tay could hear Commander Vexthor's voice barking orders. The heavy blast door to the maintenance section groaned open. "We need to let them know we're okay," Bo said, reaching for his communicator. "Wait," Tay said. "If everyone comes rushing in here, the cubs might panic again." "Let me try something." He slowly stood up. Zix adjusted his position but stayed on Tay's shoulders, clinging like a child getting a piggyback ride. Tay walked carefully to where his damaged communicator lay on the floor. He picked it up and tried to activate it. The screen flickered but worked. "Commander Vexthor," Tay said into the device. "This is Search Team 7, we're okay." "We found your cubs." The response was immediate. "Where are you?" "Are Zix and Kira unharmed?" "We're in the maintenance room, Sector 7C. The cubs are fine." "They're with us." A pause. "Say that again." "Your cubs are with us." "They're not hurt." "But Commander, you need to approach slowly. They're very scared right now." Another pause, longer this time. "We're coming in." "Stay where you are." Tay looked at Hai. She was still sitting on the floor with Kira in her arms. "This is going to be interesting. You think they'll believe we didn't hurt them?" "I think they're about to be very confused." The sounds of movement grew closer. Then the doorway to the maintenance room filled with Krelvin warriors. Vexthor came first, his weapon drawn. Nalkira was right behind him, her claws out. Cathar and 4 other warriors fanned out around them. They all stopped at the same moment. Their eyes went wide. Their weapons lowered. There, in the middle of the room, stood a human male with a Krelvan cub perched happily on his shoulders. The cub was purring and playing with the human's hair. Across the room, a human female sat with the other cub cradled in her arms like a baby. The cub was completely relaxed, making soft, content sounds. Vexthor's jaw dropped open. Alkira made a sound Tay had never heard before, something between a gasp and a growl. "Hello, Commander," Tay said carefully. "We found them hiding behind the generator. They were scared. We tried to keep them calm." Zix looked at his father and chirped. Then he nuzzled against Tay's neck and settled back down. Kira saw her mother and made a small sound. But when Nalkira took a step forward, Kira pressed closer to Hai. "I don't understand," Vexthor said. His voice was barely a whisper. "They should be defensive, aggressive. They don't let anyone touch them except us." "They jumped on us," Hai explained. "We didn't grab them or force them. They chose to come to us." Nalkira moved closer, her movements slow and careful. She looked at her daughter in Hai's arms. Kira looked back but didn't move away from the human. "How did you do this?" Nalkira asked. "We didn't really do anything," Tay said. "We found them scared and hiding. We spoke softly. We stayed calm. We made ourselves less threatening. You weren't afraid of them," Vexthor said. "We were terrified," Bo admitted from his spot by the wall. "But fear makes things worse. We tried to act calm even if we didn't feel calm." Cathar stared at the scene. "This is impossible. Krelvan cubs don't trust outsiders. They barely trust our own kind outside their immediate family." "Maybe they needed someone who wasn't trying to control them," Tay suggested. "We weren't trying to capture them or force them to do anything. We just let them choose." Zik suddenly chittered at his father. It sounded almost like he was complaining. Then he settled more firmly on Tay's shoulders and closed his eyes. "He's falling asleep," Tay said, surprised. Nalkira's expression changed. The fierce warrior's face softened. "He only sleeps when he feels completely safe." "We should get them back to your quarters," Hai said. "They must be exhausted from all this." She tried to stand with Kira in her arms. The cub was heavy and Hai struggled a bit. Immediately, Nalkira moved to help. The two of them, Human and Krelvan, worked together to get Hai to her feet while keeping Kira comfortable. "Can you walk with him?" Vexthor asked Tay, nodding at Zix. "I think so. He's not that heavy." They began to move toward the door. The other Krelvan warriors stepped aside, still staring. Word had already spread through the station. By the time they reached the main corridor, other security officers had gathered. Species from across the station watched in silence. The sight was unbelievable. Two humans walking alongside Krelvan warriors. The most feared predator cubs in the galaxy resting peacefully in human arms. As they walked, Tay could feel Zix's breathing slow and deepen. The cub was truly asleep now, trusting this strange soft creature to keep him safe. And somehow that felt more important than anything Tay had ever done. The walk through Haven's Gate station became something none of the witnesses would ever forget. Corridors that had been empty during the lockdown now filled with curious aliens. They pressed against walls and peered through doorways. Their eyes were wide with disbelief. Jin, the human security captain, met them halfway to the Krelvan quarters. She had been in a meeting with Station Command when the alert came. Now she stood frozen, staring at Tay with Zix sleeping on his shoulders. "Tay, what in the world's happened down there?" "The cubs found us," Tay said simply. "They were scared and needed comfort, and they chose humans." Jin's voice was full of doubt. "Apparently so." A crowd had gathered behind Jin. Species from every corner of the station watched the procession. The Trill whispered to each other. The insect Vex clicked their mandibles in confusion. Even the crystal beings seemed to pulse with curiosity. Me, the human xenobiologist, pushed through the crowd with her recording equipment. Her eyes lit up when she saw the cubs. "I need to document this. This is unprecedented." Later, Vexthor growled, but his voice lacked its usual force. He kept glancing at his son, sleeping peacefully on a human's shoulders. They reached the Krelvan residential section. The heavy blast doors opened. Inside, the environment was warmer and more humid. The walls were darker, the lights dimmer. It felt like a different world. Nalkira led them to the family quarters. The main room was large and comfortable. Cushions and sleeping platforms were arranged around a central space. Walls bore marks of claw scratches, evidence of cubs at play. "You can put them down here," Nalkira said, gesturing to a large padded area. Hai carefully lowered Kira onto the cushions. The cub mumbled in her sleep but didn't wake. Tay moved to do the same with Zix, but the male cub's claws tightened on his shoulders. Zix made a small, unhappy sound without opening his eyes. "He doesn't want to let go," Tay said. Vexthor stepped forward. "I will take him." But when the commander reached for his son, Zix's eyes snapped open. The cub hissed and clung tighter to Tay. Vexthor pulled back, looking hurt. "Zix," Nalkira said firmly. "Come to father." The cub looked between his parents and Tay. He made a confused chittering sound. Finally, reluctantly, he loosened his grip. Tay carefully lifted him off his shoulders and held him out to Vexthor. The commander took his son gently, but Zix kept looking back at the human. Kira woke up when she felt her mother near. She looked around, saw Hai standing nearby, and reached out with one small claw toward the human. "No, Kira," Nalkira said softly. "The human must go now." The cub made a sad sound. Both cubs watched the humans with large, unhappy eyes. "This is very strange," Vexthor said quietly. He sat down with his son, but Zix squirmed in his arms. "They have never acted this way with anyone. We should leave you with your family," Jin said diplomatically. She gestured for the humans to follow her out. As they left, Tay glanced back. Both cubs were watching them go. Zix called out a small plaintive cry. Tay felt something twist in his chest. Outside in the corridor, the crowd had grown even larger. Station personnel of every species wanted to know what happened. Jin raised her hands for quiet. "Everyone back to your duties. The cubs are safe. That's all that matters, but how did the humans do it?" a Trill officer asked. "Krelvan cubs are supposed to be untouchable." "We didn't do anything special," Hai said. "We just stayed calm." "Calm?" The Trill's feathers ruffled in agitation. "I would be terrified. Every instinct would tell me to run." Mi was furiously taking notes on her datapad. "That's the key difference. Human instincts are different. Our evolutionary path was unique." "Explain," Vexthor said. He had emerged from the quarters, leaving Nalkira with the cubs. The commander looked exhausted and confused. Mi glanced at Jin, who nodded permission. The xenobiologist pulled up files on her pad. "On Earth, humans weren't the strongest species. We weren't the fastest or the most dangerous, but we survived because we learned to read other animals. We studied predators, understood their behavior. We even formed bonds with some of them." "You befriended predators?" A Vex officer clicked in disbelief. "Wolves became dogs," Bo added. "Big cats that could kill us became companions. We learned that understanding and respect could bridge the gap between species." "We had to," Tay said. "We were weak compared to many of Earth's predators. So we became smart. We learned to read body language, to understand what an animal was feeling. Fear, anger, contentment. We learned to speak their language in a way." Vexthor's eyes narrowed. "And you used this on my cubs?" "We didn't use anything, Commander," Tay said carefully. "We just recognized that they were scared children. Young ones separated from their parents in a strange place with alarms going off. Any child would be frightened. So you treated them as children," Vexthor said slowly. "Not as threats." "Both, actually," Hai admitted. "We knew they were dangerous. We respected that. But we also saw that they needed comfort." Mi was nodding excitedly. "This is the human advantage. Other species see a threat and respond with aggression or fear. Humans have a third option: empathy combined with caution." "We're not special," Bo said. "We just learned different skills to survive. Every species has their strengths." A commotion came from inside the Krelvan quarters. They heard Nalkira's frustrated voice, then the sound of small feet running. The blast door opened and both cubs burst through. They ignored their father completely. Zix ran straight to Tay and started climbing up his legs. Kira bounded to Hai and made demanding chirps. "No," Vexthor said firmly. "Zix, Kira, return to quarters." The cubs ignored him. Zix reached Tay's shoulders again and settled in with a satisfied purr. Kira refused to move from Hai's side. Nalkira emerged looking frustrated and helpless. "They won't listen. They keep trying to leave. They want the humans." An awkward silence fell over the corridor. Dozens of species watched as the most feared predators in the galaxy chose to stay with humans rather than their own parents. Vexthor's pride was wounded. Tay could see it in the commander's eyes. This was humiliating for a warrior, for a father. His own children preferred strangers. "Commander," Tay said carefully, "maybe this isn't about preference. Maybe they're just confused and overwhelmed. Today was scary for them. They associated us with feeling safe during a frightening time. It's probably temporary. Or maybe," Mi said thoughtfully, "it's something deeper. Commander, can I ask you something personal?" Vexthor's expression was dangerous. "Speak. How do Krelvan parents typically interact with cubs?" "We protect them. We train them. We teach them to be strong. Do you play with them? Gently, I mean. Do you show softness?" Nalkira's scales darkened. "We show them love. We keep them safe." "I don't doubt that," Mi said quickly, "but your species values strength, toughness. Your interactions with your cubs are probably more intense than what other species might consider nurturing. You think we're too harsh? Vexthor's voice was cold. No, Tay interjected. I think me is saying that your cubs are responding to something they don't get at home. Not because you're bad parents, because you're teaching them to be Krelvan, strong and tough. But maybe just for today they needed something different. Something softer. Kira nuzzled against Hai's leg. The human xenobiologist reached down carefully and patted the cub's head. Kira closed her eyes and purred. We never needed softness to survive, Nalkira said quietly. Our world demanded strength at every moment. Earth demanded different things, Bo said. We needed cooperation and understanding. We needed to build relationships. Both approaches kept our species alive. Neither is wrong. Jin watched the cubs with thoughtful eyes. Maybe this is actually an opportunity. The Krelvan are expanding into the galaxy, meeting more species. Your cubs will grow up in a different world than the one you knew. Maybe they need different skills. Vexthor looked at his children clinging to humans instead of him. His expression was complicated, full of emotions Tay couldn't quite read. Finally, the commander spoke. The cubs may stay with you for now, but you will bring them back before sleep time. And tomorrow we will discuss what this means. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. It was the beginning of something new, something that no one on Haven's Gate Station had expected. And as Tay stood there with Zix purring on his shoulders, he realized that everything had just changed. 3 days had passed since the cubs went missing. 3 days that changed Haven's Gate Station in ways no one could have predicted. Tay walked through the market sector with Zix on his shoulders. The cub had become a permanent fixture there, riding high and watching everything with curious yellow eyes. Around them, vendors called out greetings. Species that once avoided humans now waved and smiled. Good morning, Tay. Pip, the small furry alien, squeaked happily. And good morning to you too, little Zix, the cub chirped in response. He had learned that Pip often had treats, sweet fruits from his homeworld that Zix loved. Hai walked beside them with Kira trotting at her heels. The female cub had decided she preferred walking to being carried, but she never strayed far from the human's side. She bumped her head against Hai's leg every few steps, as if checking that the human was still there. I never thought I'd be a babysitter for apex predators, Hai said, laughing as Kira tried to chase her own tail. Is it babysitting if they're probably strong enough to break us in half? Tai asked. Don't remind me. They were heading to the Krelvan quarters for the daily meeting. What had started as a temporary solution had become something more permanent. Commander Vexthor had requested that the humans spend time with his cubs each day. More than that, he had asked for their help. The blast doors opened at their approach. Inside, the family quarters had changed. The space now included a smaller room set up for what Mi called socialization practice. Soft cushions, toys from different worlds, and various objects for the cubs to explore. Vexthor and Nalkira waited inside. Both parents looked tired. Raising Krelvan cubs was exhausting under normal circumstances. Raising them in a space station surrounded by species who feared them was even harder. Thank you for coming, Nalkira said. The fierce warrior had softened considerably over the past few days. She watched as her cubs immediately went to the humans, happy and excited. Of course, Tay said, lowering Zix to the floor. The cub immediately began wrestling with his sister. They tumbled across the cushions, play-fighting with tooth and claw. To most species, it would look terrifying. To Tay, it just looked like kids playing. Mi arrived with her recording equipment and data pads. The xenobiologist had barely slept since this began. She was documenting everything, building a database of human Krelvan interaction. How are they today? Mai asked, pulling up charts and notes. Energetic, Nalkira said. They slept well. They ate breakfast without fighting. This is very unusual for them. They're learning calm from the humans, Mi said. Watch their behavior. When they're with you two, they're defensive and aggressive. That's normal for your species. But when the humans arrive, they shift. They become playful instead of combative. Vexthor watched his cubs carefully. I still don't fully understand it. Bo entered the room carrying medical supplies and his ever-present notebook. Think of it this way, Commander. In the wild, young predators learn behavior from their pack. Cubs copy what they see. Your cubs see you being warriors, so they try to be warriors too. But they also see the humans being calm and gentle, so they learn that too. You're saying we're teaching them to be weak, Vexthor said. His tone wasn't angry, just concerned. No, Tay said firmly. He sat on the floor and both cubs immediately came to him. Zix climbed into his lap while Kira pressed against his side. We're teaching them to have choices. They can still be fierce when needed, but they can also be calm when that's better. Hai joined them on the floor. Your species is expanding into the galaxy, right? Meeting new species, forming alliances, trading? Yes, Nalkira said. Then your cubs need to learn diplomacy along with warfare. They need to know when to show strength and when to show peace. That's not weakness. That's intelligence. Mai pulled up footage from the past 3 days. Look at this. Zix and Kira playing with human children yesterday in the recreation center. They were gentle. They controlled their strength. They understood that the human children were fragile. That's advanced thinking for cubs their age. The footage showed Zix carefully batting a ball to a human child who laughed with delight. Kira had let a small alien ride on her back, moving slowly so the rider wouldn't fall. Both cubs were still clearly strong and capable, but they were choosing to be gentle. They're adapting, Bo said, learning social rules that will help them in this multi-species environment. That's exactly what they need. Vexthor was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice low. In our culture, we are taught that softness is death, that mercy is weakness. Our world was brutal. We had to be hard to survive. But this isn't your world anymore, Jin said. She had joined the meeting representing Station Command. Your cubs will live in stations like this one. They'll meet hundreds of species. They need different tools to succeed. And they still need to be Krelvan, Tay added. We're not trying to change that. We're just giving them more options. Nalkira knelt beside the humans and her cubs. She reached out slowly and touched Zix's head. The cub looked up at his mother and chirped softly. Then he nuzzled both Tay and Nalkira, including them both in his affection. I was afraid, Nalkira admitted, afraid that they would forget us, that they would choose humans over their own parents. That could never happen, Hai said gently. You're their mother. Nothing changes that. We're just friends, extra adults who care about them. Like aunts and uncles, Bo suggested. Extended family? The concept seemed to resonate with the Krelvan parents. Their species did have extended family structures, though they were based on strength and hierarchy rather than affection. There's something else, Mi said carefully. The other species on the station have been watching this. They're fascinated. Several have approached me asking if humans could help with their own challenging situations. What kind of situations? Jin asked. A Vex colony is having trouble with aggression among their young. The Trill have communication issues between their different subspecies. Even the crystal beings want to understand emotional dynamics better. You're saying humans could be, what, therapist for the galaxy? Hai sounded incredulous. Mediators, Mi corrected. Bridge builders. You have skills that other species lack. Empathy combined with threat assessment. The ability to see both danger and vulnerability simultaneously. Vexthor stood, his decision made. I will speak to the Galactic Council representative. If humans can help my cubs, perhaps they can help others. You should not be relegated to quiet patrols. You should be where you're most useful. We're just doing what feels right, Tay said. That is precisely the point, Vexthor replied. What feels right to you is something many species struggle with. You have a natural gift. Over the following weeks, the changes continued. Humans were reassigned throughout the station. They worked with different species, helping to solve problems that had seemed impossible before. Dal the engineer helped mediate a dispute between two alien factions by understanding both their emotional needs and their practical concerns. Bo started a clinic that treated not just physical injuries but emotional trauma. Jin developed new security protocols that emphasized de-escalation over force. And Tay and Hai continued to visit the cubs daily. Zix and Kira grew stronger and more confident. They learned when to be fierce and when to be gentle. They learned that different situations required different responses. They became something new. Krelvan cubs raised with human influence, prepared for a galaxy that needed both strength and compassion. One evening, as Tai prepared to leave the Krelvan quarters, Vexthor stopped him. I want to thank you, the commander said. When my cubs went missing, I thought it was the worst moment of my life. But perhaps it was the best thing that could have happened. They were just scared kids who needed help, Tay said. No, they were scared kids who found exactly the right help at exactly the right time. And so did I. Vexthor placed a massive hand on Tay's shoulder. Not threatening, not dominant, just grateful. You showed me that there are many ways to be strong, that mercy and understanding are not weaknesses. They are strengths I never learned on my world. Tay smiled. We're all learning from each other. That's what makes this work. As Tay left the quarters, he found Hai waiting in the corridor. Together, they walked through the station. Around them, species from across the galaxy went about their lives. The station was louder now, more vibrant. Barriers between species were falling, and in small, quiet ways, everything was changing. Do you think this will last? Hai asked. This change? I think we planted something, Tay said. Whether it grows depends on everyone. But yes, I think it will last. Because it's built on something real. Not fear, not dominance. Just understanding. They passed the observation deck and paused to look out at the stars. Somewhere out there were thousands of species, millions of worlds, and humans, the newest members of the galactic community, were finding their place not through strength or technology, but through an ancient skill they had learned on a distant planet called Earth. The skill of seeing another being, no matter how different or dangerous, and recognizing the person underneath. Behind them, small footsteps echoed in the corridor. Tay turned to see Zix and Kira running toward them, having escaped their parents once again. But this time there was no alarm, no fear. Just two cubs who wanted to see their friends. Tay knelt down and opened his arms. Both cubs crashed into him in a tangle of scales and claws and happy chirping. Hai laughed and joined the pile. And for a moment, on this station at the edge of space, the most feared predators in the galaxy were just children playing with the beings they trusted most. That was the real story. Not about humans being special or superior. Just about humans being human. And somehow, in this vast and dangerous galaxy, that was exactly what was needed. The stars shone through the observation window, silent witnesses to a small moment that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The moment when different species learned that connection could bridge any gap, that understanding could overcome any barrier, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the willingness to see another being and say, I understand you. You are not alone. And on Haven's Gate Station, as the cycles turned and the years passed, that understanding grew. It spread from species to species, carried by humans who saw the person before the predator, the child before the threat, the connection before the conflict. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still misunderstandings, still moments of fear and doubt. But now there was also hope. Hope that different worlds could truly become one galaxy. Hope that understanding could replace fear. Hope that the newest species to join the galactic community had brought with them something precious and rare, the gift of seeing with the heart as well as the eyes. And in the end, that made all the difference. No, they were scared kids who found exactly the right help at exactly the right time. And so did I. Vexthor placed a massive hand on Tay's shoulder. Not threatening, not dominant, just grateful. You showed me that there are many ways to be strong, that mercy and understanding are not weaknesses. They are strengths I never learned on my world. Tay smiled. We're all learning from each other. That's what makes this work. As Tay left the quarters, he found Hai waiting in the corridor. Together they walked through the station. Around them, species from across the galaxy went about their lives. The station was louder now, more vibrant. Barriers between species were falling, and in small, quiet ways, everything was changing. Do you think this will last? Hai asked. This change? I think we planted something, Tay said. Whether it grows depends on everyone. But yes, I think it will last, because it's built on something real. Not fear, not dominance, just understanding. They passed the observation deck and paused to look out at the stars. Somewhere out there were thousands of species, millions of worlds, and humans, the newest members of the galactic community, were finding their place not through strength or technology, but through an ancient skill they had learned on a distant planet called Earth. The skill of seeing another being, no matter how different or dangerous, and recognizing the person underneath. Behind them, small footsteps echoed in the corridor. Tay turned to see Zix and Kira running toward them, having escaped their parents once again. But this time there was no alarm, no fear. Just two cubs who wanted to see their friends. Tay knelt down and opened his arms. Both cubs crashed into him in a tangle of scales and claws and happy chirping. Hai laughed and joined the pile. And for a moment, on this station at the edge of space, the most feared predators in the galaxy were just children playing with the beings they trusted most. That was the real story. Not about humans being special or superior, just about humans being human. And somehow in this vast and dangerous galaxy, that was exactly what was needed. The stars shone through the observation window, silent witnesses to a small moment that would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. The moment when different species learned that connection could bridge any gap, that understanding could overcome any barrier, and that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was simply the willingness to see another being and say, "I understand you. You are not alone." And on Haven's Gate Station, as the cycles turned and the years passed, that understanding grew. It spread from species to species, carried by humans who saw the person before the predator, the child before the threat, the connection before the conflict. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, still misunderstandings, still moments of fear and doubt. But now there was also hope. Hope that different worlds could truly become one galaxy. Hope that understanding could replace fear. Hope that the newest species to join the galactic community had brought with them something precious and rare, the gift of seeing with the heart as well as the eyes. And in the end, that made all the difference.